Okay, Rob Olver from BFBS, British Forces Broadcasting. General, I appreciate that this has not been on the agenda, but could you give us any indication of the military committee's reaction to today's fast-changing situation in Algeria, and how likely do you think it is at all that NATO would be involved in that?
We have not discussed the situation in Algeria as such. But we have been briefed by the French Chief of Defense on the issue of the situation in Mali and the French forces' intervention in Mali, but this has not led to a specific discussion as such. And as to the possible use of NATO in those, as to those issues, I will refer you to the Secretary General's views on this issue.
If I can ask
Please,
another question.
go ahead, by all means.
Thank you very much. Yes. You have been discussing Afghanistan and the situation after 2014, when the training mission is hoped to come into effect. The United States has indicated that it would not stay on if its troops are not given immunity from Afghan prosecution. And the Afghan government, in turn, has said that this matter is something that tribal elders in a national committee would have to decide. How optimistic are you that this post-2014 situation, training mission, in view of this, will still go ahead?
I am optimistic as to the post-2014 mission going ahead. And the issue you're referring to, according to the press report, has been discussed by President Obama and President Karzai during President Karzai's visit to Washington last week. And I am optimistic in a solution being found on this issue, and thus opening up for settling, shall we say, the framework for the post-2014 NATO presence in Afghanistan. Yes, please.
Dragan Blagovic, Serbian Beta News Agency, on Kosovo situation. What is your assessment on the general security situation in Kosovo, having in mind the dialogue on political level between Belgrade and Pristina? And do you think that KFOR need any more some troops, Austrian and German reserve, or you think that this is not anymore necessary to have as a...
First, let me once again commend the ongoing negotiations between Belgrade and Pristina, led by the European Union, or supported by the European Union. It's very positive news. As to KFOR, KFOR is maintaining a safe and secure environment in close cooperation with the European Union presence, EULEX, and will continue to do so in accordance with the mandate which has been given to it by the United Nations. And I am, as I mentioned in my presentation to you, or my, shall we say, my review of the meeting to you, I'm optimistic as to the way ahead relating to relations between Kosovo and Serbia.
And can you just explain what are the relations between KFOR and Serbian military and the police?
Sorry, the KFOR?
The KFOR and the Serbian military and the police.
Well, there is a professional relation which is based upon the 1999 military technical agreement, and the reporting I get from both the NATO military authorities and from the Serbian military authorities is that they have a good cooperation.
Any further questions?
Please.
People's Leader Zhang Jie, and I want to ask about, could you give me some detail about the post-2014 training and operations in Afghanistan?
In the review of the meeting which I gave you, I highlighted that this issue is being discussed at this very moment and will be discussed in the coming weeks and therefore I cannot give you any details as to where we're going, but it will be assisting, training, and supporting the Afghan National Security Forces. But the responsibility for the security of Afghanistan will be in the hands of the Afghan National Security Forces post-2014. That's quite clear. And that is the common understanding between the Afghan political authorities and the alliance.
Okay, one more question.
Yes, please.
Is this committee talk about the serious situation now?
Of the what?
A serious situation.
The situation in Syria. Yes, we are monitoring the situation in Syria, but I can only here again refer you to what the Secretary General said, that there is no operation planning relating to Syria. And of course, we were updated on the deployment of Patriot missiles from the United States, Netherlands, and Germany in support of the defense of Turkey.
Okay, and one more question
Yes.
is that I noticed that some media said Japanese Prime Minister gave a letter to the Secretary General to talk about the cooperation with NATO and Japan to deal with China. Do you hear about that?
If it's a letter which has been addressed to the Secretary General, I suggest you ask the Secretary General.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
Well, can I only say thank you very much, ladies and
There
gentlemen.
was
Oh,
one
sorry,
other-
my apologies. Yeah.
Yes, just one more. I appreciate you mentioned that you've had a briefing on the situation in Mali, and we understand as well that until there is a French request for help, that NATO won't be involved there. But has there been any indication at all of any request for French help?
Well, the French are in a bilateral talks with a number of nations, which they have expressed both at Minister of Defense and Chief of Defense level. And of course, we were informed about that, but as such, a discussion has not taken place, and there are no sorts of any kind of operational planning from NATO's side as to the situation in Mali.
Right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. Thank you for the questions. I will stay a couple more minutes if you have some further questions that you want to pose, and then we can handle it from there.
Yep. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and have a good afternoon.